All right, guys, what's up? Welcome to the Onelife Podcast. Here with Kimberly Tocco. She is here to eradicate suicide.
Yes.
You have an amazing story, a very sad story, but just a powerhouse woman, which has come from that mishap, from that adversity. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I guess as much as I don't want to dive into it, I think it's important that we get some context and go maybe back to the beginning.
Yes. So 12 years ago, happy stay-at-home mom to 4 sons. And doing the thing that moms do, you know, raising her sons, but at the same time struggling with teenagers and toddlers. I had twins that were 3, a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. A husband's a firefighter, and just, you know, trying to be that domestic goddess. You know, twins are getting a little older, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to step it up. I'm going to prepare a healthy breakfast for my kids this morning, made some breakfast sandwiches, got the kids fed. The teenagers come on downstairs, first the 14-year-old, and, you know, he's like, and they sit on down, and he looks at the breakfast sandwich. I'm so proud of myself. And of course, as teenagers do, they don't want a breakfast sandwich. It's icky, right? 13-year-old comes down, he sits down, he looks at it, and he pushes it across the table. And I give them the speech, you know, there's starving children in the world. You better eat what's before you. You better be grateful. And as I'm saying this, my husband comes downstairs, and Jason, my 13-year-old, what a kid, 6'1", pitches at 80 miles an hour, straight A student, funny, handsome, really was the kid that was our reliable one, our stable one. He stood up from the table, stood up so rapidly and so angrily that the chair fell over and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And my husband looked at him and he said, look, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm going to a meeting, and when I get back, we're going to talk. Because he was angry. He was angry about having to eat a breakfast sandwich, you know? And it was so odd. We had struggled. One of my twins has autism. We'd gone through the short sales because this was 2011. But things were coming back. Things were good. He pitched another no-hitter 2 days before. We were going to Hawaii in 2 days.
Was he angry before that, the breakfast?
No.
There was no signs of being angry? Or?
No, just a really reliable, good kid. You know, didn't go out and hang out with friends or anything. Not that I would allow that. I am one of those hovering parents, right? Gen Xers, we coddle those kids, right? And that's what was so weird. That's why the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I'm like, what's going on with you, Jason?
So that was completely out of character.
Totally out of character for him. So as my husband's leaving and Jason's standing up by the side of the table, I go sit in his chair, and my husband goes off, and Jason looks at me and he's like, I hate you, Mom. Those words were never said in my house. Those words have never been said by me to my children. Children never said to me. That word hate is never said. Now, am I a perfect parent? No. Is my husband a perfect parent? No. But we didn't ever escalate to these heights of anger. So I sat down in the chair and I looked at him after he said that, and that Gen X thing came on again. And I looked at him and I'm like, ugh, teenagers, I hate you too. I'm like, go upstairs. So Jason then goes upstairs, and I hear his phone ring, and he answers it, and it's his father. A few minutes later, his father calls the landline. Back then, we still had a landline. And I pick it up, and he's like, hey, where's Jason? I'm like, I don't know. He went upstairs. Jason, being a baseball player, he would throw the balls against the wall a lot. And I heard a noise. I'm like, he's throwing the ball against the wall. I don't know what's up with him. He's like, get Brian off to school. I'll be home. We'll talk to him. Okay, great. He's like, but I really want you to go find him right now because I'm trying to call him and he's not answering the phone. So I'm like, okay, I go upstairs and I'm calling Jason. My 14-year-old's behind me, following me. Brian and Jason, my 14 and 13-year-old, I was a single mom for a time. I left a very abusive relationship. So it was like we were the 3 musketeers. So when Brian's following me up the stairs, it's very normal, right? It was us 3, and then got remarried and had these little twins.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I'm calling him. I go to his room, can't find him. Still on the landline with my husband. I go to Brian's room, he's not there. I go to the twins' room, he's not there. We walk into the master bedroom, And when you walk into the master bedroom, my bed is all the way against the wall, and you have to take an immediate right into the bathroom. And I went right into the bathroom, not even thinking anything of it, and I smelled gunpowder. The caveat with that is everything in our closet has unloaded guns, and it was kept separately. But of course, I smell gunpowder. I'm on the phone, and I'm like, oh my God, I smell gunpowder. And I start screaming, Jason, Jason, where are you? Check everything in the closet. All the guns are there, ammunition's there. Start coming out of the bathroom, and I hear behind me my other son, Brian, Mom, he's there. And I look at him, and he's looking at the other side of my bed, and down on the other side of my bed, I see feet. And I look at Brian, and I'm like, you go downstairs. You get the twins. You take them to their room. I don't want you to see this. And I walk around, and as I walk around, I see my 13-year-old son fell over on his left side, blood pooling around his head, and he had shot himself right between his eyes in that split second. And I'm on the phone with my husband, and I'm screaming, he's dead, he's dead. And I hear, call 911, I'm turning around. And of course, instinct comes in, right? So I hang up the phone, and as I hang up the phone and I'm calling 911, I know I need a towel to cover his head, because how am I going to work on him looking at those dead eyes and that hole in the middle of his head? But I see that his body is still reflexing. And I'm like, I can maybe get something of him back. So of course I dial 911, and I set the phone down, and he's heavy. I can't, I'm little. He's 6'1", and I'm trying to turn him over. And all I can think is, please, don't let my last words to my son be, I hate you too. And that's part of my story, because you never know when those last words are going to be the last words. And I'm screaming at the 911 operator. I'm like, tell me what to do. Remind me. We do the training, but in those moments, and I just start working. And I'm screaming, where's the ambulance? Where are the firefighters? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing the compressions. I'm breathing into his mouth. And the first couple of breaths, they did go in. But as the ambulance pulled up, and I watched them in the window start coming in, and they were walking. And I remember thinking, why aren't you running? And I pushed another breath in him, and I felt it just gurgle out. I knew he was gone. And then, of course, the next moments, the next hours that go by, when they got there, they pulled me off my son. And I ran to the room with the twins and my Brian, blood on my hands. And I knew my life was changed forever. Everything was taken from me in that moment. My whole entire soul was taken from me in that moment. And you really can't explain the aftermath that happens, other than it becomes a fog, it becomes a tunnel, and you just try to answer questions like, do you want to donate his organs? Going to the hospital, seeing his body for the last time because you have to say goodbye, the people around you. These things break you in ways that it will never be repaired again. And for the next 2 years after that, I tried to start a charity. I tried to work. I tried to do something, because the last thing you want is people to forget your child. Not only forget your child, but have him remembered as the kid that shot himself. The kid that blew his brains out, because that's what it became. The stigma of suicide that follows is almost as terrible as your child being taken from you.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So I'll give you an example. If a parent loses a child to an accident, to cancer, to pretty much anything other than suicide, they come over. They bring food. They send their kids. They surround you. But for us, it was, what's wrong with that family? What really happened? They stopped coming over. No one would send their kids over.
Stop making accusations. And that affects,
there's
that affects
something
your
wrong
other son.
with them. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Then the rumors start. Then the trolling starts. They started accusing my oldest boy, Brian, they were in the same grade, that Brian shot Jason because he was jealous of him, you know, being
So
taller
kids
and
making
horrible.
saying things at school they think is funny, which is like devastating.
Drawing pictures of my Jason with a target on his face and a gun in his head. And the stigma is way beyond even that. You know, people come up to you, well, I hope that he held Jesus in his arms because he's a sinner and he will not go to heaven. I mean, so many things. Why?
People actually do that?
Yeah, yes, they do. They walk right up to you. Is this in
Arizona? Oh,
yeah, Arizona. But this is everywhere.
Wow.
This is everywhere. You know, and when you would say, you know, what happened to your child? I'm so sorry for your loss. You get that immediate empathy, but then when you say, well, he committed suicide, immediately it's like, again, what is wrong with you because of the stigma of suicide? It is automatically assumed there's either a mental illness or you're abusive to that child. It is automatically assumed that there was extreme darkness to push that child. What were they doing to him that made him go that direction? What they don't talk about is it is not mental illness in all cases that cause that. It's stress, it's anxiety, it's what we call a missed transgression. It's thoughts in our mind and energy that has nowhere to go. And why doesn't it have anywhere to go? Number one, young men have no one to talk to. Young men are told, buck up, buttercup. No excuses. There's no crying.
I would argue all men, not just young men.
Yeah, all men. Exactly.
My dad was a firefighter. My dad was the man's man, just like your husband. The alpha, the man's man, the one that steps out, the one that doesn't cry, doesn't show vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly.
Is your husband like that?
Yep.
So is my dad.
He shuts his emotions off, and he has to in his job. But it is such an assumption that you are weak if you show emotion.
100%.
And vulnerability is a huge strength. Vulnerability is the way we reach and touch other people without even having to be in the same room, by sharing a story like this. This is extreme, raw vulnerability.
Do you know what I'm beginning to understand is females get it. Females get that guys need to be vulnerable and they love it, but guys don't get it.
No. And women suffer in their own ways, right? When it comes to that.
But at least a woman will call a friend.
Yes.
Like you, if we're dating, we're going to fight. You're on the phone 2 seconds later. I'm bottling it up. You see it firsthand.
Because it's not acceptable for a man to show his emotions.
To be weakness or show emotion.
So we have this gorgeous 6'1", talented kid. Again, pitches no hitters. He'd been practicing to become a punter because he could also pitch or kick the ball almost the full length of a football field. Just a physical specimen. There was really no signs other than he loved to play video games and would complain that I would take them away from him, right?
But I mean, my mom did that too.
Yeah, exactly. So let's put ourselves in the place of a young athlete who can't go to his coach to tell him something that's going on in his mind because the coach would be afraid to go ahead and have him pitch because the coach is thinking, well, what if I trigger him? What if he doesn't pitch well? Does that mean he's going to go kill himself? I don't want to be responsible for that. So the kid's not going to tell his coach. Kid's not going to tell school because school has a mandatory lockup of 48 hours. If any sort of mental illness or threat to your own life, they will have to take you away and watch you for 48 hours.
And other people probably can hear about that too.
Well, right? And who wants that? It's not always mental illness, but that's what's assumed. Oh, he needs to be evaluated, he needs to be locked up, there's something wrong with him. That's the stigma. So
sometimes people just need an ear or someone to vent or someone to talk to. And it doesn't have
these
to be...
were the problems that I started noticing in those first 2 years, right? He's not going to, even if he did come to us too, and this is something that parents really need to listen to. Even if he did come to us and said, you know what, I'm struggling. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but I'm in pain and I don't know who to talk to. I don't know how to get it out. If he would have come to us for that, I would have looked at him and been like, you have everything going for you. Buck it up. Again, shake it off. Come on, we've got baseball games. Come on, we're going to go to Hawaii. You know, just get over it. You have everything going for you.
Plus, that's a hard conversation to have with anybody.
With anybody.
Even your parents.
With anybody, right?
Your best friend, your mother.
The greatest ally of suicide is its silence. Keep it silent and it grows. It grows in the silence. And that's how it's become such a pandemic. And when I say pandemic, in America alone, Between the ages of 10 and 24, it's the second leading cause of death. Every single day, we have 130 people complete suicide. But even more shockingly, over 4,000 every day attempt suicide.
4,000
in America
this
alone. Yes.
130 actually go through with it.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And when we talk about attempting and going through with it, right? And those are only the attempts reported. I know I attempted a few times afterward because of the pain. I didn't report that. I just didn't end up succeeding, right?
4,000 a day.
A day.
130.
And those are the ones reported. So you think it's at least twice that.
Okay.
That's 8,000 a day in America alone.
And then 130 people.
And
from the ages of 12 to 20?
10 to 24 is the second leading cause of death.
That's
10
insane.
years old.
Why is that not more awareness on that?
The silence, the stigma, it's shameful.
But I mean, just in general.
In general, it's shameful. Think about it. Think about it. Here's another scenario, and I'll give you an adult scenario. That's not a kid scenario. Say on the weekend you discover that you've got a tumor and it's fatal. And you go to your employer on Monday and you say, hey, over the weekend, I discovered I'm going to die. I've got several months left, but I need a week off to meet with my family and discuss what we're going to do. That employer is going to embrace you and give you everything you need. We'll hold your job for you. Your benefits are here. You let us know. But if over the weekend you almost killed yourself and you go to your employer on Monday and you say, I'm being pushed, I'm being stressed, I almost took my life this weekend, I need a week off to be with my family and discuss what I'm going to do. The only difference in that scenario is one has a tumor and one was just pushed so much that they felt like taking their life. What's that employer going to do though?
Nothing.
That employer,
you get back to work.
You could lose your job because you're red flagged now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So if you're a pilot, you're not flying anymore. If you're a firefighter, you're not on the truck anymore. If you're, in most cases, you're red flagged because you're mentally ill and there's something wrong with you. There is something wrong with you if you talk about being depressed. There is something wrong with you if you talk about, I hate my life. This is what has caused it to be this massive in attempts to leave this world, because there's no safe place just to say, I don't want to be here anymore. What do I do?
For anybody at
any age,
That's,
especially men.
That's very interesting. With the kids you're talking about, the 10 to 24, what percent are male compared to female? Is there a lot more males, even as kids?
So that's the other statistic, is males complete suicide. I think it's 3 times as much as women do. Women attempt it more than men. Men complete it. Why is that? Men use more aggressive means.
Okay.
Guns, hanging, jumping off buildings. Women use pills, alcohol, drugs, that sort of thing. And men just being more aggressive and being more spontaneous, they complete it. The assumption, again, that it's depression, that it's mental illness, that there's something wrong, we really have to think about the pressures of this world. And we'll take my son as another example. 6'1", straight A student, the only really stable kid out of my 4. The reliability that we had on him, Jason, we'll get Jason to help us with that. Jason watched the kids, because Jason was the one, right? If we have these kids that are going to games, going to practices, they barely have time to breathe. And for him, when I think about it, his really only time to breathe was his video games, because that's, and that's why he wanted to play them so much. We don't think about these things that we're doing to our kid because we're pushing them to be the best that they can be, instead of allowing them to make their own decisions. This world is so success, multiple sports and multiple music and learn languages. And what if they don't want to?
Has it got worse over the years?
Yes.
Okay, so what's changing there? Say early 1900s, 50s, now to today. What's the difference?
We didn't have reported, back then. That's a big thing. But I'm going to use COVID as one of them. So here we now have kids that have to stay home now. They can't even go to school. They can't even be around friends. They're locked up in a house with parents that, again, not trying to pick on the parents that just treat them as kids that have everything going for them. Parents that look at their kids and say, I'm going to have you do everything I wanted to do because I never fulfilled my dreams. So the kid doesn't want to disappoint the parents. So how's a kid going to say something to their parents? You know, we're not opening up the lines of communication. So during COVID, that number almost doubled for kids at school age taking their lives. They were getting bullied. Bullies are a big thing too. It's so much pressure to be successful, to be perfect, to be beautiful, to be educated at young ages. Kids are supposed to be kids. There's enough pressure just with going to school. So it substantially increased.
I had a guest on yesterday, and very pretty girl dating a professional baseball player. And she was telling me that she was lonely and depressed and unhappy, living in a mansion, not having to go to work, but more unhappy than ever. And she was like, who am I to complain about my life?
Right.
Most people would envy my life.
Yep.
So even somebody like that has nowhere to really turn to, to talk to. Who am I to, I mean, I've felt like suicidal, but I've felt like alone, lonely, depressed. And I'm like, who am I? I'm 6'1", 220, who am I to complain about anything?
Right.
So I get it.
Right.
Not to that extreme, but
right.
I mean, there's two examples that come to my mind straight away. So how many other people are feeling like that?
Yeah. Pain and suffering, pain and anxiety. All of us will have pain. Life isn't fair, but suffering is a choice. And if you're sitting in a mansion, like we'll use this young girl who has the picture of life, right? The picture of life that society has told us we have to have. Society, the programming, go to school, go to college, work 9 to 5 until you're 60 years old and you're almost dead. And then guess what? You get to retire.
Yeah.
And what do you have to show for it? Life is not about what you can accumulate. Life is about how many lives you can change and who you become. Because who you become is the only thing you take with you.
Love that.
That's it. So if you're sitting in a mansion and you're married to this perfect specimen of a man and you're miserable as fuck, I'm sorry, but I'm going to swear, then you are not serving the purpose of your heart. And that became
purpose of your heart.
That became my why. Why did my son do this? What is suicide? How do I change it? And how do I change it for me? Because I will tell you, every morning that I woke up, that pressure, that pain, I mean, you close your eyes at night and all you see is his dead body. You open your eyes in the morning and all you see is his dead body and that he's not here and that you'll never hear him again.
It's literally PTSD, isn't it, for a mother? And that's a whole nother thing, right? Where do you go with that? And how do you?
Well, whose fault is it? It's my job to protect my children. The one thing a parent needs to do is teach their child joy and keep them safe. And I failed.
Do you take on the guilt yourself?
Oh, of course I did. Of course I did. Totally took on the guilt. And I think in the beginning, that's what drove me to, I started a little baseball charity just to, I needed to do something. So again, his memory. Don't remember my child as the one who shot himself. Remember my child as, yes, it was tragic, but look what we did with that event in his name. We started to change lives. We started raising funds for inner city kids to play baseball and, collecting equipment, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me because I was still dealing with the guilt. I was still in denial. What is suicide? What happened? It comes down to not serving purpose. We as humans are not here to, again, collect and have a good time. We are here to serve each other. We are here to serve each other, not ourselves.
You like Tony Robbins?
I do.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about someone who's depressed is someone who lacks purpose. And I'm a huge believer of that.
Yeah.
And I think in today's society, we don't have to hunt food. We don't have to, our lives are so easy.
Yeah.
And I think because the easier our lives get, the less purpose we have.
And do we sit down with our kids at, say, age 8, age 11, age 15, and have that conversation and look at them like we would a really good friend? Do we look at them like, if you got to sit down with Tony Robbins, you would sit there and be like, What's your purpose? Tell me everything about you. We would show extreme enthusiasm. But do we do that with our kids? Or do we sit down and be like, okay, how's your grades? How'd you do in practice? Maybe we need to add this. You look a mess. You know, where's the, you know, what do you want to do? What are you feeling like you want to do? You don't want to play baseball? Totally fine. You want to sit around for a little bit? Totally fine. Do you need a break? You got it.
Gotcha.
And then let's talk about what you want to do.
So is this what you recommend parents should do with their children?
This is what suicide is. Suicide is free will, staring back at you and asking you to choose. And if in that moment you are in your darkest hour, you will have two choices. I'm going to leave this world, or I'm going to choose life. And both of them have a huge ripple effect on everything and everyone around you. So if your child comes to you and they say, Mom, Dad, I'm struggling in school. Mom, Dad, I'm struggling with sports. Mom, Dad, I'm getting bullied. What have you? What's more important to you? Their life, or making sure they stay in school and buck up and deal with the bullies, buck up and deal with the homework, buck up and get through the sports? Why are we pushing them? Why aren't we listening to them?
How do you create that relationship and the ability for a child to communicate to you like that?
There's two scenarios that happen. You can't, in all cases, go to your child and be like, oh, what's wrong? Tell me what your problems are. But if you go to your child and you say, I'm struggling right now emotionally. I really need your support. Will you spend the day with me?
To be
Will you talk with me? Turn it around and have the child feel like they're helping you. And when that child feels like they're helping you, when that child feels needed by you, no longer just an accessory to the family, no longer just this pressure to become this magnificent person that we try to make them, when you make yourself vulnerable to that child, they begin to serve you by being there for you.
That's okay. And then vice versa.
Then, naturally, if you're spilling your guts to them, tell them your shit. Tell them what you went through. Why are you hiding what you did as a kid? You know, that's the other thing. We tend to want our kids to think we're 100%. Such perfect parents.
Yeah, 100% right.
Show them your raw mistakes. Show them where you fucked up. Show them your vulnerability. Make it safe to show them that.
I could see the value in that for sure. I don't know anything about my parents, like good or like bad stuff.
Right.
As far as I know, they're angels, which I know they're not.
Which is bullshit. I mean, obviously, you know, my kids had seen me go through a lot already, especially my older ones, but it is that making yourself completely open to them so they realize, number one, by being vulnerable and open, someone will come and help you. Your child being the one helping you in that moment. They feel the reward of reciprocity in that moment. And then number two, they feel safe opening up and being vulnerable, say, to a friend.
That's interesting.
Or even back to you. We're building this society of perfection that no one can live up to.
Yeah, and social media doesn't help with that.
And we need to build a society who thrives on their creative imagination and serving their purpose, which comes from allowing them to choose what they want to do with their life.
Okay, so what about bullying, online bullying? Where should a child go? Obviously, you just addressed like that's how you build a relationship to go to the parent.
Yes.
Where else can they go, and what is the right way? Because I feel like that is kind of not at the same stigma as suicide, but I feel like it still has a bad stigma. Like,
self-worth.
Man up, toughen up. You can deal with it. Hit them back. Like
you have to teach them self-worth, self-love. When a child gets bullied, in most cases, they're getting bullied because they don't know their own self-worth. They don't love themselves enough to be able to brush off words, right? I hate using the word haters. Hate. Haters go towards what they feel is a person who's weak enough in their own self-worth that what they say will dig. People are in so much pain that in order to distract themselves, they will take another person and cause them more pain so they feel better.
100%.
So it's the same thing with kids. If your kid comes to you and they're being bullied, number one, especially at school, take them out of school. Take them out of school. School is not so important again. School's not more important than your kid's life. Take them out of school. Give them a week off. If you can afford it, take them on a vacation. Take them one-on-one. Help them understand how important they are in this world. Help them begin to understand the God spark within their heart and how important they are. Because we're all ordinary people striving to be extraordinary.
So you're not hiding from the problem. You're just taking them out, giving them time to breathe, and then building.
Yeah, because what would you do? What would you do if you were being bullied in a situation? Would you keep pushing yourself back, or would you go to the employer, or would you take yourself out of that, strengthen yourself up, and then when you go back in and they say something,
okay,
I know my self-worth.
How do you build a kid's self-worth?
You show them that you need them.
So that's
you show them that you need them, and then you show them how important their thoughts are. We're so busy putting our own expectations and thoughts and goals into that child, we don't listen to them. So what if they don't want to play baseball? So what if they don't want to go swimming? So what? What do they want to do? By extracting out from them their dreams, their wishes, and supporting them, whatever it is. You know, they want to raise worms. You know, who cares about that? Because again, it's not about material success. It's about how many lives can be changed with whatever comes up out of their own creativity and imagination. That's what we don't do. We don't tell a child that what they're thinking in their mind is brilliant and beautiful. We tell them what they're thinking in their mind is silly. How many times, stop being silly. Be quiet. You're too loud. Children should be seen and not heard. They're just been programmed to think that all of their thoughts, all of their wishes are nothing. They're silly. And this is what mom and dad want me to do, so I guess I better do it. Because mom and dad are the superheroes. Mom and dad are the angels. I guess all of my thoughts aren't important. And they begin to shrink. And when they begin to shrink, they start getting bullied. And the bullies reinforce their own little self-worth. And they shrink and they shrink and they shrink, and it has nowhere to go. And it builds up. And one day, they're looking at free will, staring back at them and asking them to choose.
And even a lot of conversations have come up here, even away from suicide, it's still going to have problems later on in life. Being told to shut up, sit in the corner, keep your mouth shut. And then that applies you're an adult. And then you wonder why, as an adult, you struggle with these things.
So you're a man, you man up. You're a woman, have babies, look sexy. That's your only worth. What do you look like? What can you give? It's all societal programming. And, you know, I'll take the Kardashians. What is their message to this world? What is their significant message?
I don't watch it, but I would say it's something exterior.
I don't watch it either, but
look
like a sex doll so you can marry a rich man.
That's probably something.
Like your girl that you just talked about. Beautiful girl, got herself the rich man in a mansion. She has no purpose. She sits there and all she realizes is she's aging and she's going to lose that beauty, and then what's she worth? Because she's never been told that whatever inside her thoughts, whatever's inside her heart, whatever she dreamt of as a kid is insignificant and meant nothing. Be beautiful, marry a rich man, and have money. That's it. That is the main problem. Look at the people you're following. Look at the people you want to emulate and be like. What is their message? What is it? Mine is to eradicate suicide. Mine is to teach people that your imagination is divinity. Your imagination isn't something you make up. That is a message from God telling you, follow your path. No matter how weird it is going on, there's something to come from that.
Can you, suicide in general, can you give me statistics and like, you know, more on adults and things as well?
So in adults, women between the ages of 39 and 55 is the common age of most women taking their lives.
And why is that? Is that
aging? Women aren't worth anything as they get older. I'm going to be 51 next month.
Going back to what you said.
And that literally, I just had this conversation a couple months ago. It was with a younger guy, very wealthy, and respects me very much. But he looked right at me and he said, "You no longer have worth for a man of wealth. You can't have babies. You're not, you're kind of aging. You're not going to be my arm candy in 5 years. What are you worth?" And this was, he's one of my best friends. It was just a general conversation.
Yeah.
But that is how women are looked at. We're forgotten. You're no longer worth anything. Bye.
And that's okay.
And they drink and they become fat and they become overweight and they eat like shit and they feel like shit. And then when they look in the mirror and they've already been told that they're worth nothing, and they look in the mirror and they don't even recognize who they are anymore because they're not even trying. Because why should they try? Their life is over. They're not worth anything.
Is that generally after a divorce or something? Or is that just women just aging in general?
Aging in general. Because
it's really sad, isn't it?
Yeah. It is pushed. Think about what women do to their faces, what women do to their bodies. Surgeries, fillers, lipos. And I can say this and I'm very proud. I've never done any of that. Right?
But you're building yourself up the inside, which is the most important
My
thing.
beauty comes from the inside. There's plenty of times, especially after my son, I looked right in the mirror and said, "I hate you." There's plenty of times I hated the way I see. There's plenty of times that, again, I'm turning 51, but I am coming into my majesty, not my gray old years of uselessness.
You know what's probably funny too is someone like, I used to model, fitness comps, things like that. If someone comments on me on my exterior, it's so shallow and it means nothing to me.
Yeah.
But if someone asks me, what's the last book you read? What's your favorite quote? Who was your favorite podcast guest?
Show me who you are.
That has depth and meaning, and that actually counts to me. And I think you're on the same page, right? If someone's like, "Oh, you're so pretty," it doesn't mean anything.
Means nothing.
But I feel like 99% of the population need to hear that. "Oh, you're beautiful, you're pretty, you're buff, you're good looking, you're..."
Because that is what has been driven by all of the influencers. That's what's been driven.
Even before that, right?
Oh yeah.
Even before social, I feel like it's...
that's been around for a very long time. And I could go on forever about women's rights and this and that. And I'm not a feminist either, because I believe a woman's role truly is supporting her man. I believe because we are stronger emotionally and can take shit emotionally, we have to be that support of the man, because when he's out there in the world, like we just talked about, when he's out there in the world, he's the hunter, he's the provider, he's that face of, protector. But when he comes home, we are the soft shore. We are the sand. We are the safe place. But what happens when a man comes home? And why is that? Because women are taught that all they're good for, sex, children, and their looks, and they have no one to talk to. They have no community, because women compete against each other too. Women don't have friends that they can call, and when they do, it's usually hey, let's go drinking, or let's go get Botox, or it's always competitive with women. There's no vulnerability there for them either. So men are coming home having no safe place to a woman that's, "Pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, because this is all I'm worth. Look at me, look at me, look at me." And it creates this horrible divide between men and women, because he doesn't want to come home and hear all that. I just need to chill. Men need to chill for a few moments. And that's causing the anxiety, especially in marriages. Been married 10 years. You have no good friends to talk to because women are so competitive with each other. You can't talk to your husband because he's been out there being a hunter and the provider, and he needs to come home to a safe place, but you're immediately jumping all over him. Women are chaos, men are logical. It just causes a continuous breakdown to where you hate each other. You're no longer your best friends.
It's interesting. What about guys? What age?
It's usually the younger men, because again, the pressures.
Is it really?
There's the pressures. I think as men get older, they tend to be a little more secure. Okay. There's a difference. Men become more distinguished as they get older. Older men are really desired by the younger women because they want to be taken care of, right? And
it's funny, the older I get, the more I realize it doesn't. matter.
Right. Yeah,
But if I was I'm 43.
Yeah.
If I was a female, it'd be completely different. But the older I get, I realize it doesn't make any difference for me.
Right.
Get some grays. Apparently girls like grays.
But it's cool,
like,
right?
Yeah.
It's cool, you know.
But a grey for a female at 43, you're like, oh, I'm losing it.
And be honest, when you look at a woman who's aging, I mean, would you date a 50-year-old, right? Like, that's not exactly what a 43-year-old, an average 43-year-old, he's not going to go for a 50-year-old. Why is that? Because, well, she has no worth to me. Why?
And another thing comes to mind is probably baggage or children or something, right?
She's been used.
And I hate saying that, but that's the kind of things that come to mind.
How many kids does she have? Oh, God, how many baby daddies does she have?
Yeah. That's interesting.
But a man can have baggage.
Why can a man have baggage?
Because aging does not devalue a man. Aging gives a man more value. So the baggage doesn't matter.
Really?
It doesn't matter.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, again, the innate nature of a man and a man's going to provide for the woman. And it doesn't have to be money, but a man does protect and provide for a woman. So at any age, a woman can look at you and be like, he's going to provide for me. He's going to protect me. She's not looking at him as a physical specimen, though it is nice, obviously. We all want that.
It's always a bonus, yeah.
But a man looks at a woman as to what can she provide me physically? How is she going to make me feel better? Number one, that beautiful woman on my arm. Number two, she's fertile. She's going to have my babies. And number three, she's going to stay looking like this for a while. I don't have to deal with a saggy butt and some wrinkles and, boobs that are going to hang down. And
it's so extremely shallow, but
it's true.
I get it.
Men are visual.
I get it.
Women are emotional.
I want to ask you this. I feel like, and you might be able to relate to this, when you go to school, you feel like that is the world. It's so important.
Yeah,
nothing else matters. That relationship. And then you get out of school and you realize it's so insignificant in life. How do you get across to kids in school, people in school, that this isn't forever? If you're being bullied, if you're not the popular kid. I mean, I wasn't the popular kid. Right. I wasn't this, wasn't that. But then my life got so much better outside of school.
Personally,
people take their own life from a breakup at 16.
Right. Personally, I think our school systems are completely damaged. I think they need to be completely torn down. I think children need to be looked at and evaluated individually where their talents are. If they like marine animals, then they should be able to study that and apply those talents to what they're doing. I think more homeschools, more certified schooling, this whole, kindergarten to 12th grade bullshit of trying to teach them every single thing so that they can just become a 9-to-5 worker later, even if they go on to college, they're not at any point developing their natural born gifts. They're just...
Yeah, or encouraged to find them.
Or encouraged to find them. So, number one, if your kids, take them out of school. I just am not a fan of what's happening in the school systems. I mentioned my youngest one is autistic. And he's 15 now. And we worked really hard with him to engage him. I fired all of the therapists because the only thing I wanted out of that kid was for him to be happy and social. And that's what we did. We played with him. We didn't put demands of school on him. Of course, he's had to do speech therapies and things. And at 15, he's mainstreamed in high school. He's quirky as hell, but he's mainstreamed and he's a happy kid. But the other day, a couple weeks ago, he's in the bathroom and 7 seniors come in, bust down the stall door and start filming him because he's autistic, he's different. And you know what we did? Because he's got a twin brother. We had the police involved. We got there and we said, anytime my child goes to the restroom, he's going to be escorted. I took him out of school for a week. I gave him a break and I said, do you want to keep going to school? Or do you want to be homeschooled? And he's like, Mom, I'm going to do this. I want to learn karate. I want to learn how to defend myself. And I'm going to go back to school. He made that decision on his own, but we made it very clear, it's your decision and we'll support you either way. The school system doesn't do enough. and they can't do enough. They're not getting paid enough. There's not enough people. They don't give a shit enough because they're not getting paid enough. They're not being appreciated. And therefore the staffing goes down and bullies happen. Okay. But parents don't have choice either. They have to send their kids to public school because both parents have to work now.
Yeah, gotcha.
Everyone in this country, everyone in this world has been taught that you work 9 to 5 again until you're 60, until you're almost dead, and then you get to rest and retire. No one's encouraged to pursue what their true creative self is and who they're truly worth.
For me personally, I wasn't good at school.
Me neither.
And I came out of school not knowing what I wanted to do. And I thought I wasn't going to be anybody or do anything. It's not until I started, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read the first book I ever read. If it wasn't for that book, my life would be completely different.
Right.
And that taught me that schooling isn't such a big deal.
Right.
And self-education is such a big deal. In finding what you're good at and following your passion and finding a way to get paid for what you love to do and having a purpose.
Think if you were 5 years old
before
you went to school and your dad read that book to you.
Exactly. And planting that seed at an early age, right?
Seed, and then being like, what do you like to do? Let's go play drums. Do you like that? Cool. We'll keep doing that then. You know, let's write a story. Tell me a story. Let's write that down. Do you want to become an author? Cool. Let's do that. No one does that. Why? Because parents are being worked to death. Parents have to send their kids to school. They can't afford daycare. They have no choices. We're stuck in this cycle of what society has programmed us to be.
We're also being trained to be employees too.
Employees, yeah. You're doing what you love.
Absolutely.
Right.
I always have because of that book.
And right. Because you reached inside yourself and asked yourself, after reading that book, obviously, what do I want to do?
Yeah, it opened kind of Pandora's box. I read that, and I've read thousands of books since. And every time I read, it's given me permission, I guess.
Yeah.
It's allowed me permission to know there is a different way.
Yeah.
And you always talk about go to school, get good grades, get a good job, work 40 hours a week for 40 years and retire.
Yeah.
And then you'll be happy.
Right.
But why not enjoy your life from day one?
Right. And don't
have a purpose while doing it.
And have a purpose. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's the other part of it where, you know, someone would look at me or say, you know, Stormy Wellington and, oh, you're successful and you got to pursue your dream because, you know, you're talented or you're good at. No, it's hard work either way. If you're going to work hard, if you're going to work yourself to death, as they say, then why not do it
for yourself?
For yourself, for your dream.
If you're not making self rich, you're making someone else rich.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, for me, once I finally figured out that I needed to share the story of my son, I am a writer anyway, I realized because of the way society is, no one was going to listen to me. And if I really wanted to change that foundation of suicide into one of life, I had to get successful, but I had to do it in something I loved to do. I'm one of those people. I've been a whitewater rafting guide. I've been an actress. I've been a private investigator. I worked in bars. You know, I've done it all. But I needed to find something that I loved to stick with, that I loved to do, that would also change lives. So I'll tell you how that came up, and maybe it'll be a good way to illustrate how you can step into something, right? So I dropped out of school in 11th grade, and I've been successful in my past. But again, 2 years after this, it was January of 2013, and we're in a shitty rental because I wasn't going to go back to work. I couldn't get my mind about going back to work after losing my son. Twins are almost 5. Oldest boy is 16. And we're in a shitty rental, husband carrying us with the one income. And I was sitting there, I'll never forget, I was sitting there, glass of wine in my hand, watching some whatever on TV. And I looked at my twins 2 years after losing their brother and just feeling the energy of the sadness in the house. And they were laughing and they were playing. And I was like, why can't I feel that? Why can't I get over when I'm sitting here trying to drink down and drown out? I looked at he was almost 16 at the time. And he was doing well. He was staying close to his friends. He was dealing with this so much better than me. And I'm the parent. But it was when I looked at my husband He was pale, he was thin, he was gray, but he was looking at me like I was going to break. And I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you just going to sit here and let this be it? Is this it? Is this it for your life? Almost 41 years old and miserable as fuck. Everyone else is thriving. Everyone else, at least my husband's trying. I'm the one sitting here. So we'd had a bankruptcy. We'd had a short sale, and we're in this shitty rental, basically living paycheck to paycheck. And I'd heard on the radio about an extenuating circumstance loan, that you could get a loan if you could prove the reasons why you had a bankruptcy and a short sale was because of extenuating circumstances in your family. So I called that lender, told her the story, and for 2 months, sent her over 1,000 emails. They wanted death certificates. They wanted letters. They wanted proof over and over and over again. Finally, she called me in March of 2013. She said, I've got you through underwriting. They approved it. I couldn't believe it. She's like, this has never been done in the state of Arizona, but I'm telling you, you're approved. We need to find a house now. But when I called real estate agents, they all said, I can't do that because I know for a fact, if we even get you under contract, if we get you accepted with an extenuating circumstance loan, it's going to fall out at the end because they always find a reason why. Well, maybe it wasn't extenuating enough. That's why it had never been done in Arizona. Number one, couldn't find an agent that would even present me to a seller saying, I know this is an extenuating circumstance loan, but trust us. We've been through the ringer. They're good people. This is going to go through. We're going to do everything we can to make sure this deal is done, accept this offer, right? They weren't going to do it. They didn't want to disappoint us. I get it. We'd been through enough. They didn't want that liability. So I took my tax return money and got through real estate school in 18 days. And by the end of March of 2013, I was licensed. And by June 1st, we closed on a house.
And you did it yourself?
Did it myself.
Awesome.
And, you know, seeing my twins running around in the living room of a bright house that wasn't dark and dingy, my older boy picking out his room and giving those keys to my husband. He had his feet again. We had a foundation again to start building again. I was fucking good at it too, because I knew how to negotiate. That was my thing back in the day, right? So in the last decade, that's what I did. I became the agent who could help families who had been through hardships start a new chapter. I've given back over $250,000 of my own commission towards closing costs to help those families. They may only have $1,000 for groceries when we close, but they have a house.
Yeah.
You know, they're no longer paying someone else's mortgage. They're no longer sitting in a place that is shitty. They're sitting in their own place. It belongs to them.
And then
no one can take from them.
You got that purpose.
Got that purpose,
That's
right?
awesome.
And again, I was good at it, and I liked it. I liked serving, changing lives. And not every transaction is great. Not everybody's grateful either. You know, you get the people that take advantage, right? You do a pro bono case and then close on the house and they're in Hawaii and you're like, what? But that's on them, not on me, right? So when I finally, March of 2018, winning awards, Rookie of the Year, I was determined. The one person who could change this foundation that my son left behind was his mama. And I struggled many times, woke up many mornings, found myself cutting my wrists, you know, because it's pain. It needs to go away. And so this whole time I'm struggling to overcome this pain, but at the same time, seeing a light of at least tell his story, Kim. Get successful enough so people will listen to you. And then also study and find out why this happens. Study the soul, study energy. How can you reverse this? So by March of 2018, I had my first 6-figure month, closed 11 deals.
Nice.
And I was like, it's time. It's time, Kim. You have to get more exposure. You need to get on HGTV. So that's what I did. Started making videos, started a podcast, got the attention of a director, got on Pool Hunters, inaugural episode filmed in Arizona, being aired July of 2019. And I knew, because, you know, it takes 10 months, a year after you film it. I knew I would have to have something ready by the time that launched. So in 4 weeks, I sat down and I wrote the book.
What's the book called?
Overcome, Memoirs of a Suicide.
Okay. That's a best-selling book.
It reached number one, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. I know we're running out of time. So August of 2019, I locked myself in my room and I start writing, you know. In that first year after I lost Jason, I blogged my feelings. I blogged the insanity, the craziness, the stigma under a pseudonym. And I decided to go back to those entries in the first and second year, the craziness I was going through before I could focus on how to even get through life, and reflect back on it as the healed woman. To explain to the reader why I was thinking that at the time and how I dealt with it and got through it later. So the book one, I'm almost done with book two. Book one is about how I overcame, number one, the loss of my child, and number two, choosing life. The ripple effect. I knew when I sat there, either with a gun in my hand, a knife on my wrist, wanting to pull my car right down into the ditch and die, because I'm going to be blunt. That's what you choose. You choose to leave this world, you will choose to die. And it will have a ripple effect. And I couldn't stop thinking about the pain I would cause my children. Regardless of how insignificant I felt, regardless of how they're going to be so much better off than seeing this sad, crying, broken mother. They're going to be better off with me choosing life. And each and every time I chose life, I got a little stronger. I started to see my path a little bit more. I was rewarded. I was rewarded with pride. I'm strong. I am so strong. That became my purpose, to teach people that, number one, by choosing life, you are rewarded with joy on the other side. Number two, you will gain a strength that will allow you to open up and become vulnerable and find what your purpose is. And number three, be proud of your failures. Be proud of your mistakes. It is the raw, ugly part of the story that people need to hear. And when they hear that, and when they see that, when they see a successful person who pulled herself up out of complete darkness, they can do it too. So I wrote the book and launched it March 11th, my birthday of 2020. My birthday was the raw, ugly story of how I got to that. I had a stage performance. That's what I do. You know, I tell my story. Brought other stories of overcoming. 2 days later, it hit number one that day in Amazon, and bipolar and anxiety and new releases. By Friday, March 13th, COVID hit. But it still held number one for 2 weeks. And that was my thing, though. I was going to take my show, my stories of overcoming, my stage performances, and travel the country with what I call tenacious healing.
Okay, amazing.
To allow any age. I was going to have it in open parks, have blow up screens, so kids, teenagers could come and just hear the stories. It's not allowed in schools. America doesn't allow these types of really graphic discussions in school because it's a liability. Because if you tell your story and a kid goes home and still makes the wrong choice of leaving this world, because that is a wrong choice, then they feel like they're liable.
Really?
They have assemblies. They Teen Life, and they touch on this, and there's all those suicide prevention and galas and fancy dinners, but the kids don't go there. Kids don't get to go to the fancy dinners. They don't ever get to hear this. So that was part of the healing tour, just allowing anyone to come listen. That people like me didn't just get here. I had to fight for it. I had to fight for it so I could come to them and encourage them to fight for it too. So COVID hit, and it still held number one, but I had to evolve. I had to change everything. And fortunately, I went to Delphi Metaphysical University for 2 years, really fine-tuned my gifts as a metaphysicist. And when I say that, I mean in energy and spirituality, not in like doctorate of science. So that I could help people find their joy, find that spark within. When you remember the spark within, even if you have a gun in your mouth and your heart starts beating really fast, it's not beating fast for fear. It's beating fast because it's saying, hear me, feel me, choose me. I promise you, by choosing me, it's not going to be easy, but you will grow stronger. And that 1 second, the second you choose life, there's a ripple effect that can be felt on this entire planet. Why do I say that? Everything is energy. Everything is energy. Matter is energy. I'll use a scripture. First, there was the Word, and the Word was God, right? If everything is energy, in order for energy to become matter, it has to vibrate loud enough and dense enough to cause a noise. First, there was the Word, a noise, and the Word was God, right? The point of that is to say, if everything is matter, or if everything is energy, and words become matter, what we say to ourselves, what we create, what we choose also becomes matter. We are energy, we choose life, it has a ripple effect and is felt. You can't tell me that sitting here next to me, you don't feel stronger. You can't tell me that sitting here next to me, that you don't feel the fight for life, that you don't feel the passion. But if I came in here and I went down, and I don't want to be here, you feel that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has a ripple effect. You cause pain or you cause joy. You leave this world, you will cause pain, and the world becomes darker. You choose life, the world becomes brighter and lighter, and so do you. How do we beat what's happening in this world? We keep choosing life. Choose life. Choose life with me. I'm testimony that you can. Again, didn't graduate, was a stay-at-home mom, didn't have any education whatsoever when it came to real estate, finance, how to even become a real estate agent. And I've been able to become $1 million producer. I've been able to create my own podcast by looking on YouTube, learning how to edit. I didn't pay anyone to do it. I did the hard work so that I could become the ripple effect.
Yeah.
To prove that you can choose life, and you can choose life in any way you want to create it.
Love it.
Because we're energy.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For your time. Thank you for sharing. That was,
Cool.
That was, I love what you're doing. I'm so blessed to have you here.
No, I mean, I'm so glad we got to come in too. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.